Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, what I thought I'd do is I'll go over some of the comments that I received in relation to this video that I put out around 6 months ago. Now, if you haven't seen this video, this was basically me in a certain point of my life where things weren't going my way. We just bought this house. The same time I bought this house, I lost my employment for 10 years. My car was vandalised, and then we had some problems with the actual property itself as soon as we got the keys. So if you haven't watched that video, go to it, because these comments will make more sense to you if you've watched that. So the comments that I've decided to go over, I received around 1,000 comments and I replied to as many of them as I can, but I just thought it'd be interesting for you to actually hear my train of thought and why we've done some of the things in this property that we've done and why we even bought it in the first place. So let's jump to the first comment. Okay, so the first comment from viewer Monty Lado 7 says, you should have kept the gas water heater, especially if you have power overload problems. Instant hot water on demand. So what this viewer is referring to is when we bought this house, there was a gas bottle in the corner of the kitchen that was firing the gas water heater. And the day we got the keys, it became apparent the water heater wasn't working. A couple of days later, I had a local tradesman come in and he confirmed that, yeah, it was kaput, it was broken. So this gave us two options. We could either replace it with another gas boiler or we could put in electric. And we decided to go for electric for several different reasons. The first one is it's just cleaner. You know, I didn't particularly want a gas bottle in my kitchen. Now, I know a lot of people basically designate a cupboard and put the bottle in that. I didn't want to do that. This kitchen's around 12 square metres, and when we've done the refit of it, we wanted to utilise every single space. So that was the first reason. The second reason is as well, in my mind, if you've got a gas bottle that's heating your hot water, you need a spare. You can't just have one bottle, because when that empties out, you need to be able to make the change. So that basically meant two big gas bottles in my property, and I just didn't like that. Now, just in case you're unaware, here in Andalusia, mains gas doesn't exist. So any gas appliance that people have here has to run off of a bottle. So that was the first reason that we decided to go for electric. The second part of this viewer's question, he says, especially if you have power overload problems. So in that video that I mentioned that I put up that had all the comments, I specified in there that we was having issues in the kitchen. If we put on the oven, kettle, hob, whatever it may be, straight away the power would trip. Now initially I just thought we needed to up the power of the potentia, but it turns out it wasn't actually the power. The power running into the house was actually fine. It was actually down to the wiring. It was a very old wiring in this house. This is an old property, 150, 200 years old. So when we refitted the kitchen, we opened up all the walls, we replumbed everything, and at the same time we rewired the kitchen. So now we've got modern cabling that's able to handle the heat and the current that's going through. And now we've got a fully functioning kitchen where we can have all modern appliances working. The second question comes, or the second comment, should I say, comes from David Beaver 589, and he says, at least you're giving it a go, taking risks, etc. Well done. Life is all about living your dream, and you are. Well, thanks for that comment, David, because we didn't get as many positives as we did negatives, but I totally agree. You know, taking risks is something that I actually enjoy. You know, I'm one of those people who'd rather have tried and failed than to have not tried at all. And it certainly is about living your dream. We've got a dream here, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, well, I just chalk it down to a life experience. That's all it is. It's not life or death. But thank you for that comment. Positive comments, always really nice to receive, and it really lifted our spirits. The next comment is from Man on the Rock, and he says, you haven't failed. You're just in the bottom of the curve. It'll work itself out. Relax, adapt, integrate. Can you speak Spanish? And I totally agree. I don't think we'd failed. I think when we bought this house, because we had a series of issues all at the same time, it was just a little bit of a dampener. But for me, failure isn't something that particularly worries me. As I said just now, I'd rather have tried and failed than to have not tried at all and just wondering what if. And things do work themselves out, always. If I think back on any single problem that I've had over my life, it's just that, it's a problem. It's never something that hasn't been able to resolve itself one way or the other. Relax, adapt and integrate. Yep, totally agree with that as well. I think we all have different levels of stress that we can handle, and my stress levels are pretty good. So yeah, I was pretty relaxed about the situation. I did decide to take a little bit of time away from this property just to sort of regather my thoughts on exactly where I wanted to go with this house after we bought it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's important to relax, take a deep breath, and plan out what you're going to do. Adapt and integrate. Yep, I think adapting to any situation is really important, regardless of whether it's doing a house up or a complete life change. It's always important because you're going to enjoy it more if you can. And integrate. So, from an integration point of view, I think I've integrated pretty well into this country. I've been here more than 2 decades. I've had Spanish partners over the years, and I've lived in very non-English speaking areas of Spain. So I've had to integrate, and I've enjoyed my integration in this country, learning the language, learning the cultures, the customs, and just how this country works. And then lastly, can you speak Spanish? Yes, I speak Spanish. I had very little choice really. When I first moved to this country, I lived in the northwest of Spain, in an area where English just isn't spoken. You don't basically get any English tourists there, and I was living with a Spanish girlfriend, so I had pretty much no choice but to learn the language. Okay, the next comment is from Alice Susan Harding, and she says, it's a lot of work, worry and money, but are you sure all this investment is going to be worthwhile, or are you just throwing money down the drain? So I'll break all of these points that she's mentioned in this comment down. So it's a lot of work. I didn't think it was that much work, if I'm honest with you. I previously run a medium-sized business in the UK, and that was a lot of work. That was 18-hour days, 7 days a week for a decade. So this has actually been a pleasure. It's been something that has been a bit of work, but I've got up and done it with a smile every single day. I've enjoyed watching the progress. So for me, I suppose it depends on what you class as a lot of work, but this was an enjoyable piece of work that was done here. Worry and money. Are you sure this investment is going to be worthwhile? So there was a little bit of doubt always when you're trying something new, but that's part of the excitement. If we knew exactly how everything was going to go, it wouldn't be fun. So from a worry point of view, I wasn't overly bothered. And from a money perspective, you're saying it's a lot of money. Well, yes and no. We bought the property at the right price, and we had a budget in mind that we needed to stick to for the reform, and we're actually under budget. So that is something that basically didn't cross my mind too much. We also know what properties are selling for in this area. We've done our homework before we bought this particular property. So I'm relatively sure that we're on the right side, and we would come out of this renovation with some money. Okay, the next comment is from Terence Kidd 1097, and he says, if you move to Spain, learn Spanish and live their way of life, and try not to impose your old British way of life. Totally agree with you, Terence. If you move to any country, it's important you learn the country's language you're in. I think it's only polite, but it helps with integration. So totally agree with that comment. And from the point that you're saying, don't impose your old British way of life, well, that's something that I've never done. When I moved here 2 decades ago, I actually done the opposite. I wanted to learn more about the country that I was a guest in, certainly not try to change it. So, yeah, I think there is an idea that when British people land in Spain, they stay in their own little enclaves and they don't integrate with the locals, and they try to bring the British traditions and customs here, you know, fish and chips, a pint down the pub and all that sort of stuff. But that isn't me. That isn't what I do. You know, I've lived in lots of different areas of Spain, and now I'm living in a very rural, whitewashed Spanish village, and I'm certainly not trying to bring a British culture here. Quite the opposite. I'm immersed into Spanish culture, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Okay, the next question comes from Too Young to Be Old, and he says, sorry, but after so many years in Spain, why do you need a builder who's fluent in English? And this is a really good question. So it's not that I need a builder that is fluent in English. In actual fact, I think we had 4 or 5 contractors come through. Out of the 5, 4 of them were Spanish speaking. It just happens to be the contractor that we went with happened to be from Belgium, and he was fluent in English as well as Spanish. So why did we go for that person and not one of the Spanish builders? Well, first of all, there was a huge difference in cost. The Spanish builders were trying to charge me twice as much more than what we actually paid with the Belgian contractor. Secondly, The Belgian contractor, who happened to be fluent in English, actually has a house here for sale in the village. And before we bought this house, we went and viewed that property, and that property's been completely done, and it is stunning. And he actually did the work in the property himself, so I'd seen the quality of his work. Also, as well, one of our neighbours had actually been using this contractor, and this contractor had done huge work in the house. I mean, literally massive amounts. And we went to their house, saw the work, and I just felt very, very comfortable with this particular builder, who, like I say, happens to speak fluent English. Now, for me, could I have done this reform with Spanish builders? Yes, I could have done. But when you are doing something like this, particularly if it's not your normal trade, I'm not a builder. So for me to be able to liaise with someone in my own language over the finer details and get things done exactly how I wanted, for me it was just brilliant. It really was, because there was no doubt in anyone on how it was going to be done. And also as well, one of the things that I particularly like about the builders from Northern Europe is that they're more used to the bad weather that we can get. Because, for example, here in Andalusia, we have like 300 days of sunshine, and the houses are typically built to deal with one problem, and that is the heat. They're not built to deal with the cold and damp. So I wanted a builder who's experienced bad weather, who knows about drainage and all of this other stuff, because when it rains like it is right now, we've got Storm Leonardo above us as I'm filming this, it's really important. So that was the reasons for it. Okay, the next comment comes from Maximus GRT, and this viewer says, this happens a lot overseas. When we leave our shores in the UK for pastures green or wherever, have to remember it's their country, their rules. Nice to see Dean's got the guts to do this. Man, he's an employer of 10 years folding, a quick change of plan overnight. If you're going through hell, just keep going till you get to the other side. There seems to be a lot of criminality down in Andalusia. I've seen bars over windows and shutters over properties. Can't help thinking when you come back to your villa, your TV, if your TV will still be there, or worse, everything's nicked. So I'll break this comment down. I did see a lot of comments on this video, and I have to be honest and say, some of the people giving me advice, I'm sure many of them have gone through what I've gone through, but I also got the distinct impression that there were a lot of people just trolling, giving advice or their opinions when they haven't actually experienced it, and they're not talking through life experience, just through what they see. So I'm not sure if Maximus GRT is somebody who's done what we've done or not, but in relation to the pastures green, well, when we leave our own countries, we are looking for somewhere better typically, and Spain isn't paradise. You know, I don't think any of the countries I've lived in over my years, Italy, Belgium, Spain, wherever it's been, has been perfect. The UK isn't perfect. Nowhere is perfect, but I feel very comfortable in Spain. I like the culture, I like the people, I like the weather, and I like the way things work in this country. It's a lot less materialistic, and people just enjoy their time, their time to live a lot more, and that's something that I don't think the UK gave me. Nice to see Dean's got the guts to do this. So again, thanks for that, because that's a really nice comment, because a lot of people see this stuff going on and don't always have the backbone to do it. So it is nice to get a pat on the back for that. In relation to him saying a quick change of plan overnight after my employer folding, well, my employer didn't actually fold. What happened was, it was a large international company with tens of thousands of people employed, and it just so happened that my particular position in the office that I worked in was not needed, and I could have kept the job, but it would have meant moving to the Philippines, and that wasn't something I wanted to do. So for that reason, I decided to take redundancy. Regarding criminality down in Andalusia and bars over the windows, so yeah, they're basically a design part of the architecture of the properties, but they are there for security, and they work. You know, house burglaries in Spain, they do happen, but it's virtually impossible for you to get into this house. We've got bars on every single window, we've got a very strong front door, but to be honest with you, once you've lived in the country as long as I have, I don't even notice them. But so yeah, I don't think I'm going to come back and have everything nicked in my house. The next question is from Zombie7376, and this person says, I would imagine the reason why English speaking is easier, so you can get problems sorted as soon as possible, can worry about language barrier and integration later on. So I think this was again in relation to why I had to use an English speaking builder. I've already answered that, but regarding language barriers and integration, just briefly touch on that. Yes, I speak Spanish and I think I've integrated as well as anybody possibly can. But if you're new to the country, it's massively important that you do learn the language. Get yourself Spanish friends. Spend as much time around Spanish people as you can and integrate. It's the only way. If you stay in your British enclave, you're just never going to really experience what this country offers. Okay, the next comment was somebody replying to the previous comments, a Zombeats comment, and this person, Rolo's Internet 1853, he says they've lived in Spain for over 10 years by the sound of it. Plenty of time to learn the lingo. What do you think of immigrants to the UK not being able to communicate in English after 10 years living there? Immigrants must adapt to their host country, and he's the immigrant there. So I've actually been here for 21 years this year, and yeah, it's plenty of time for learning the language. It took me, I started learning the language as soon as I arrived here. I had no choice but not to, due to where I was living and having a Spanish partner. But it's something that if you are planning to move to Spain, you should start learning, if you can, ideally before you arrive, because it will certainly make things easier for you. In relation to what do you think to immigrants in the UK not being able to communicate in English? Well, I think the same goes for anyone. If you move to another country, I think it's hugely respectful and polite that you speak the language that you're in, of the country you're in. And to actually extend on that, I think if you get residency in any country, it should be part of the residency test. There should be a test to see that you've integrated and that you can speak a moderate level of the country's language. Okay, the next comment comes from Thickoel, and this viewer says apparently he does not like Spanish rural style and he wants to change it to the British way, which is not too wise. Personally, I like the Spanish style, solid floors, solid kitchen worktops that don't shake from impact. So I have never said that I don't like the Spanish style. In actual fact, if you've watched the renovation series of this property, we've kept this house pretty much Spanish, and the areas where we've put new flooring down or new bathrooms, etc., even the style of the kitchen, we've tried to keep it as integrated into the style of these properties as we possibly can, you know, even from the colours of the doors and the materials we use for changing the doors. So if I wanted a British house, I would have stayed in Britain. You're not going to get a British house here in Spain, and certainly not in one of these whitewashed Spanish pueblos. So no, in answer directly to that, I love the Spanish architecture. In fact, I absolutely adore it. I like the furniture, I like the tiling, I love everything about it. But you need to understand, this is a very old house. As I said earlier, 150, 200 years old. This house hadn't been touched for decades, maybe 50 years in places, or even more. It needed reforming, it needed bringing up to date in certain areas, new wiring for the electrics, new plumbing, new showers, and it certainly needed a new kitchen. If you would have seen what came out from this kitchen, termites, rats nesting, I think you would probably think exactly the same. But yeah, I love the Spanish architecture. In fact, I think it's probably my favourite kind of architecture in the world. Okay, the next comment comes from WinNutter64, and this viewer says, do not spend another euro on it. You will not see any of your money back. Sell it, take a loss. Did the same inland in Andalusia and lost 100k and 2 years of hard work. It's a well-trodden path. You're only improving local housing stock for free. Take the hit now. So this appears to be somebody who's actually talking from experience, and obviously they didn't have a great time. They lost 100,000 and 2 years of hard work, and I've seen this happen time and time and time again. And I think it comes down to several different factors. The first one is going to be what the market is doing. You know, if you buy it at a time when the property prices are very high, for example, here just before 2008, prices were through the roof and then the market dropped. So I think that's part and parcel of it. You need to buy it at the right price. Now, obviously, none of us have got a crystal ball and we can't predict what's going to happen with property in the future. But I think overall, you know if you're buying at a good price or not. don't spend another euro on it. Well, obviously that was something that we had an option on when we bought it, but it would have actually cost us a lot of money if we would have just put it back on the market and tried to sell at what we got. We had the legal fees, we had the taxes that we paid to get in, we had lots of associated costs. So it's not just as easy as putting a property back on the market and selling it. You're going to take a hit, a big hit. And again, as I said in response to one of the other comments, we knew that we'd bought a property at the right price in this area. We also knew how much our budget was and what we feel we can get back for it. So, yeah, it's not something that we've done blinkered. I think we've done it with some background knowledge. Okay, the next comment is from Lord Palmerston, and he says, stop buying houses as investments and use them for what they are, somewhere to live. So the background was, we originally bought this house and planned to live in it for 6 or 7 years. That was our idea. We've been renting a little bit further down the coast in the Marbella area. I've been renting that property for 10 years. It cost me around £120,000 in rent, and I was fed up paying rent. Yes, unfortunately, I have another property in this country, and that is the house that we will retire to, but that house is 6 hours from where we was working when we bought this house. And basically the whole idea of buying this was to buy it, live in it, own it, and then sell it when we want to retire and take that money to fund our retirement. It was as simple as that. It wasn't just a buy and flip. You know, that's not what my business or my game is. So I do agree that you should live in them, but I also understand that people's circumstances change, and sometimes, you know, that means that maybe you buy somewhere and you have to sell it sooner than you planned. Okay, the next comment comes from Laura Rojas, 8490, and she said, sadly, they will not listen to you, talking about me and my wife. These country pueblos are incredibly difficult to sell at the best of times. So, again, I don't know where this person lives and if they've actually experienced it, but I actually completely disagree with this comment. I've been in this country 20 years and I've seen the property prices go up, and for most people, now I'm talking most people, they're at the point where they're unaffordable. They're certainly unaffordable for many of the Spaniards because of their wages are so low, and even to a degree, retirees or people that, excuse me, are selling their properties in the UK are paying over the top for things now. You know, a 2-bedroom apartment on the coast now for something that's nice can be $500,000 or more. In these pueblos, you're getting a lot of property, a lot of space. You're not living on top of somebody else for a fraction of the cost. And what's interesting as well, there's actually official statistics out that are showing that there seems to be a massive want at the moment for rural properties. So again, I can't tell you for sure because I haven't sold this yet, but I feel very, very sure in my mind that if we put this up, it will sell relatively quickly. I'm talking within a few months. And I think we will make money. So I do disagree with that comment. Okay, the next comment is from DMD YouTube 123, and this viewer says, once you start ripping these old buildings about, the work and costs never stop. Whatever your budget is in your head, I recommend that you at least treble it and then add some more. Paint it and take the money and run. So yeah, I think maybe to a degree that can happen if you go into something blind, but we actually set a budget for this before we bought it, and we're actually under budget, quite a bit under budget. So I think it depends. If you've got no idea of what you're looking at structurally, then it's a possibility. I think also as well, if you don't speak the language of the country you're in, you are open to being ripped off. I've seen it happen many, many times. People paying, 4 times as much as they need for something purely because they can't get the work done at by a local tradesman because they don't speak the language. But our experience on this is quite the opposite. We're actually under budget. We've got 95% of the property done now. The bit of work that's left to do is very simple, and I know what that's going to cost. So I suppose it is down to those points I mentioned. Okay, the next comment's from Patrick Foley, and he simply says, more proof the grass is not greener elsewhere. So there are a lot of videos on YouTube where people are honest, and that's what I try to do in my videos. We do see the videos on YouTube and Instagram where people say things are fantastic, and that's the side they want you to see, whereas I try to paint a very real picture on my channel. I'll tell people the positives and the negatives. The grass isn't greener. I mentioned it earlier. Paradise doesn't exist. It's a different set of problems in a different country. But again, it's about the life experience. If you want just an easy life where you don't need to learn the language, you don't need to understand new cultures and customs, stay where you are. You know, if it's as simple as that, because wherever you are, there's going to be problems. So it's not about searching for greener grass. Greener grass, sorry. It's just about searching for something new, something exciting. And you know, this has worked for me in Spain for 20 odd years. I've enjoyed this country, but the day I stop liking it, I'll go somewhere else. Okay, the next comment is from Marisa Berry, and she says, if it's not on the coast, it could take years to sell. Yes, it could, but I can tell you as well, for matter of fact, there's properties on the coast that I know have been on the market for 10 years. So just because something's on the coast doesn't mean it's going to be snapped up. Personal opinion on this is that I actually think inland properties at the moment are probably very desirable, if not equally as desirable as coastal properties. What I tend to see is people that move into Spain have this dream of living near the sea. They want to be near the beach, and that's typically where most people head when they're new to the country. I did it, you know, for a decade. I lived on the coast and I enjoyed it very much. But when you've been somewhere for a long time, you then start to look for something new. And what we're seeing inland now is we're seeing an influx of younger property buyers who simply can't afford to get property on the coast because it's just so dear and expensive, and to a degree overpriced now. So that's one of the reasons. Another thing is as well is I study the market here in this area, and property here is moving extremely quick. I mean, I'm seeing properties go up and sometimes they're going in days. So yeah, I kind of feel I can counter that argument, and I've got facts that can back that up as well. Okay, the next comment is from JLM-2TC, and this viewer says, enjoyed the vlog. Your honesty was refreshing. Hope it all plans out for you. Look forward to following your journey. Well, thank you for your comment. As I said before, I try to be as honest on this channel as I can. You know, I don't want to paint a picture of something that doesn't exist. I try to be real, raw, and when things are great, I'll tell you they're great, and when they're not, I'll tell you they're not. And that's certainly the sort of viewing that I like. I like to see the ups and downs and what's good and what's not, particularly when people are making decisions, and particularly if it's a big life decision like moving to Spain. But thank you for watching the journey, and again, thank you for taking the time to comment. Okay, the next comment is from Lola Itha Jasmine, and she says, love your honesty, so eye-opening, best vid of the year, very useful. I need more viewers like you, Lola, because these are the sorts of comments that really put a smile on my face. So thank you for your comment and taking the time to actually write. And I'm glad you enjoyed the vid. Okay, the next comment is from Lolita Rouge, and she says, almost 12,000 a year times 10 years in rent is a tremendous amount. Well, yes, it is. It's obviously a lot less than, say, London, but it is a lot of money. And when you consider as well, for most people that are living and working in Spain, their yearly salary really isn't that much. You know, there's a lot of people that are earning 12, 13, 1,500 euros a month. So to have to pay that amount out in rent just for a normal average property is a lot. But as I said earlier in response to one of the other comments, I got fed up spending that. You know, I just felt that I was paying for somebody else's future instead of investing in mine and my wife's. So that was the reason that we decided to buy a second place, this one, and live in this. Okay, the next comment is from Mariji Tervor. Sorry, I don't speak Dutch, so I hope I pronounced that right. But she says, thank you for your story. Every problem makes you stronger and more creative. Totally agree. Problems do make you stronger. They show you what you're made of. But as I said, most problems are just a frame of mind. If you can actually change the way you look at a problem, all of a sudden it changes your perspective on it, and it doesn't necessarily become a problem. It can just become a challenge. Okay, and the last comment comes from Browse for All, and this viewer says, I'm mid-50s in London. I've been looking at property in Andalusia as they're under 50k and need improving. I'm surprised more British people have not snapped up the property there, as it looks beautiful in the pics, but is it too quiet compared to East London? So yeah, you're absolutely right. There's plenty of properties on the market, 50k or less, but it's important you do your due diligence. I did mention this in one of my other vlogs. A lot of the time when you see these cheap properties, it could be because the property is not fully legalised. Now, one of the things that buyers often get caught out on is that they'll buy a property and then realise that, only a part of the property is legal. So it's really important you get a good lawyer and you do your homework before you part with any cash. Is it quiet compared to East London? Yes, it's massively quiet. If you buy in rural Spain, it's like buying in the countryside in England. It's going to be a big culture shock compared to London. But it really depends on the life you want. If you want to slow things down, you don't want to be working so hard to pay for things all the time, then this is the place to come. It gives you a completely different perspective on life. And don't get me wrong, you know, I love London. I love it hugely. And at times I consider, should I move back there? But they're two different worlds. And it really depends at the end of the day what you're going to prefer the most. I'll give you an example. I moved back to London for a year and a half around 2011. And after a year and a half, I couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't that I wasn't enjoying London. I love London, but all I personally done in London was just work solidly just to pay the bills and just to have a little bit of a lifestyle. Whereas here, it's the complete opposite. As you can see, you can buy property cheap, the cost of living is cheap, and life just slows down. So it really comes down to what you're looking for. So anyway, guys, as I said, I can't go through every single comment. The vast majority of the comments that I received on that video were pretty much from people saying, don't throw any money into this house, you're not going to get it back. And time will tell. You know, maybe I will be proved wrong. But personally, I think I'm on the right side and I think I will come out with a small profit. But let's see. Continue to watch the channel. And then when I do eventually sell this place, whether it's this year or in 5 years' time, you'll know if you were right or wrong. Anyway, as always, if you've enjoyed this vlog, please remember to give it a like. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free to do. It doesn't cost you a penny, but it really helps this channel to continue to grow. Anyway, enjoy whatever you're doing for the rest of the day, and I'll catch you in the next one.